And boy, did that just kind of go wrong. So not to be so incredibly annoying and like only knit petite knit patterns, oh my gosh. Knitting is way more adjacent to baking than it is to cooking. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Jackie and this is Jacqueismaking, a place where I talk about all the knit garments that I'm creating. In today's podcast episode, I'm going to be talking about two of my most recent finished objects, two of my current whips that I'm working on, and lastly, I'm going to talk about a new yarn acquisition that I have, as well as the plans that I have for it. To start off, I'm currently wearing my latest finished object, the Cumulus Blouse. This is the Cumulus Blouse by Petite Knit, and I knit this out of one strand of Suri and one strand of Mohair held together. This yarn in particular is a hand-dyed color by Sorella Yarn, and this is from the Gilmore Girls collection in the colorway I Am All In. And it's like a very just kind of muted pastel-y baby blue color. What's interesting is the Suri ended up being a little bit lighter than the Mohair did, so they actually paired together really beautifully, and if you look up close, it's almost like a little bit of a marling effect in just the ever so slight tone differences. The biggest thing with this yarn that you may or may not have heard on my channel was that I didn't order enough for this pattern. So I'm sure you saw from the picture I put on this screen, the Petite Knit version is a full-length sweater, and that was my intended version to make, but I didn't order enough yarn. So with a lot of indie hand dyers, what they'll do online, especially just if this is their way of like having a huge e-commerce platform, you know, some designers for sure like only sell in person, but kind of what's happening in the space a lot lately is these online yarn dyers will have these beautiful big collections. They'll get orders and then they won't dye the yarn until all the orders come in. So usually they'll have orders up for maybe like a weekend or a week. They close it down and then they dye all of the yarn at that point and then ship it out. So it's kind of like a made to order type of process. So when I ordered this yarn, I didn't get it for like 6 to 8 weeks afterwards. So I do think it's a really good business practice because there's a lot less waste. They aren't, you know, like dyeing so many skeins and then having so much back inventory and so on and so forth. But it is a little bit unfortunate when you mess up and you don't order enough because what they dye is what they dye. So I can't just go onto their website and look at past colors because they don't sell past colors. And so you can, you know, go on Ravelry and see is anybody selling their past ones. You could try to look at online forums, but it is particularly hard with how many collections that they're doing to try to like find those sort of resources. So a dyer, for instance, like Sorella is doing maybe upwards 5-6 collections a year. And so to get something so specific as a one color in a Suri or in a Mohair is like, it's kind of like a needle in the haystack. There's not as many as, for instance, a yarn line that has a color that's been one of their colors for the past 5 years. You know, it's so much harder to find that color. So yeah, I didn't even end up looking or searching. So I did, you know, peruse Ravelry a little bit, but I didn't really end up asking anybody for their skeins. I thought, what would this look like instead as a t-shirt? So if I didn't say so already, what happened was for my size in this pattern, I needed 100 grams of each skein to like make this pattern. So typically you would hold 100 grams of Mohair with another 100 grams of Mohair to make my size, which is the size large in this sweater. So when I was ordering yarn, I saw Mohair and Suri, they're both lace weights. Wouldn't it be cool and kind of different to hold a Mohair with a Suri instead of Mohair and Mohair? I saw that they were slightly different colors and I just thought I'm gonna be the unique one and do something different. And boy, did that just kind of go wrong. I have since learned and said is like my new mantra is knitting is very much like baking in that knitting is way more adjacent to baking than it is to cooking, in that there are specific formulas for a reason, and if you are just a couple stitches off, a couple of yards off, it's so much more particular, especially because our bodies are ever so slightly different than, like cooking, where you can just kind of, I'll just add in this, I'll just do that, what if I just add a little bit of this in there and do a little bit more here? I think in the knitting community, a lot of people will go into that cooking sort of mindset and mentality, and it ends up with them being a lot more frustrated and not getting the outcome that they're wanting because they're not treating it like baking, they're treating it like cooking. And that was definitely my mindset going into this. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just switch this out, I'll do that. And what happened was, even though they are both lace weights and they are both 100 grams, a mohair had about 130 yards more than a Suri did. So note also, you're getting way more bang for your buck with the mohair, but that's beside the point. I thought I was getting the same amount in those 100 grams, and I wasn't at all. So looking at the yarn that I have left over, I absolutely would have been able to knit a long sleeve with just the 100 grams of both mohairs. But because I had the Suri, I would have ended up either with like an elbow length or a quarter length sleeve. And me personally, I do think an elbow length would look good on me in a garment, but in this particular material, I didn't think it would look good. And then I also don't really like 3/4 sleeves on me. I just don't really find them very practical. I would rather just have either a long sleeve or a short sleeve. And then I started to think about, if this was, more like a vest or a short sleeve, would I wear it, for instance, in like an early spring, a winter, like a January, February? This is a very like January color to me. Would I wear it with a long sleeve underneath it? And I was like, yeah, that would be really cute. I'm even picturing like a black and white striped long sleeve t-shirt underneath this in the winter. I think would be very cute. But if I were to do that, I think it would look best with this length and not a elbow length. I thought it would look a little bit funnier to have a long sleeve underneath an elbow length. So this is the route that I went, was just a short sleeve. And what I ended up doing is I posted on my Instagram. If you guys don't follow me, I'm the same name, at jacqueismaking. And I love to get on there and like ask my followers questions. What do you guys think? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I had asked like where I had split for sleeves. It was very much so like a cap sleeve. And when I tried it on, I actually felt like it looked great. It's definitely a style like I would wear if it just had that sort of capped sleeve. But I asked my followers, and the most votes got add a few more rows. So what I ended up doing is, from where I split for sleeves, I added 5 more rows and then bound off into the I-cord bind off, and it ended up in this perfect length for me. So I love the way that this ended up. I think the t-shirt length is absolutely perfect and just fits me so well. So with that being said, this pattern I did kind of let sleep for a little bit. Once I started it and I was so excited to start working on it, I will say you do work flat for a little bit longer than I typically do for like a top down in the round garment, just because you're getting these whole V-neck increases in to shape this. So you're essentially knitting to here before you join in the round. And it was just flying by for me. It was so fun, it was so fluffy, and I was really excited to make this garment finally. And once I figured out that mistake that I had made with the yardage, it really just sort of killed my mojo for this. So I got so frustrated. I ended up just putting this aside. I was like, I just need to get this out of my mind for a little bit. And once I finished my next finished object, I'm gonna show you, I remembered this just sitting in the corner of my craft room, and I was like, you know what? Like, what if I just tried to figure that out and tried to decide what to do with it? Because at that time, I was still trying to decide, am I gonna color block it or am I gonna do a short sleeve, whatever. And when I took it out, I was just invigorated by this yarn and by this pattern. And especially when I put it on the try it on tubing and I was able to see that a short sleeve could actually look really cute, that's when I got the mojo back and was able to fully start knitting again. It was also really easy to pick up again because I was already in the round on the body. And that is kind of something that I recommend if you're going to set down a project. Sometimes we don't have the capacity to get a project to a good spot before we set it down. But if you are able to just get it to a point where like it's in the round or it's a really easy stopping place that you'll be able to pick it back up. I definitely learned from this project that I was so quick to pick it up and restart it again because I had left it in a good place. So I picked it back up, and you'll see I kind of calculated the days I had knit on it up until I set it down, and then the days I picked it back up until yesterday, which is when I finished it. And so in total, this garment took me about 23 days to knit. So it was a fairly fast knit. Keep in mind, I do have the short sleeves, not the full length, so that probably played a little bit into it, but it did feel like a faster knit given that you use US 7 needles and it's a very open, bigger, airier gauge. The construction with this top, like I mentioned, top down in the round, it has those raglan style increases where you're increasing on either side of a stitch. They look really beautiful. And then you're finishing each edge with an I-cord bind off. And it was kind of funny because the next object I'm going to show you was the first time I had ever done an I-cord bind off. So it was kind of cool. I had 2 back-to-back projects where I was doing that. So it was just really fresh in my mind. But what was interesting is this one, you're slipping back 4 stitches. And on my other project, I was slipping back 3 stitches. So that was another thing that I learned is that with I-cord, you can, I'm guessing, have either a shorter or a bigger I-cord, depending on how much you're slipping back and then knitting through the back loop. So yeah, the I-cord definitely, it's not fast by any means, and it's a little bit annoying to work. I do know there are those I-cord makers now. I know there's like a size inclusive account that makes them. I'm not sure the other company. I'll have to put the name up here, but it's like an I-cord maker that supposedly makes it much faster for you to make I-cords, but I'm not 100% sure. Can you use that while something's already on a garment, or can you only use it if it's not attached to something to just make freestanding I-cords? And if you did that, then could you attach it later? I'm just not sure about any of the logistics of that, but it definitely went through my mind as I was binding this off, just because it definitely does take longer to do. The other difference with this top is I did hold 2 strands of mohair together for the I-cord bind-offs, just in the chance that I would run out of yarn. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough, and so that's what I used. And I thought, it might be kind of cool and have a big stark difference. There's barely a difference. I feel like you can't really tell unless I tell you and you're up close to it. So yeah, but that's that. That is the Cumulus blouse. I am very excited to wear this. This is kind of an outfit that I picture myself wearing it as, just with jeans and this white tank top underneath. I also have a white t-shirt that looks very similar, and I think it just makes it a very casual way to wear it. I do think it could also really easily be dressed up without a garment underneath. And so one of the things that I'm thinking about is I have a wedding coming up in 2 weeks, and I have this really beautiful, it's almost more like a slip dress in that silky material. And I remember the last wedding I went to where I wore a skinny strap dress. When I was in the church and in different situations, I was definitely just cold or felt like too exposed. Like in the church, my last wedding I went to, I was in a Catholic church, and I felt like it was just like I felt too exposed in the church, like just wearing very thin straps. So I was thinking this might be really cute to just like wear over top of this dress. Maybe I'll insert a picture here and see what you guys think. If you think it would be cute to just have that as a layer and then take it off once I get to the reception. Yeah, that's been something that I've been thinking about doing. But totally, this as like a date night with something like a little bit dressier of a bottom, I think would be so beautiful as well. So I like this element that I can dress it up or dress it down. And it does very much to me seem like a top that is more perfect for, like I said, layering piece in like January, February, and then early spring, like March, April, May. I think this would have been ideal to wear because it is, you know, it's Suri and Mohair. It's warmer. As it's getting more humid and hot outside, this is not a garment that you're gonna wanna wear outside, but with the modern marvels of air conditioning, inside at my office is actually pretty cold, and I have a big meeting this week where I have to be in the office multiple days just for these sessions, and I'm gonna try out wearing this in those sessions because I think it's gonna be a perfect, like, comfy but also dressier kind of outfit. And I think it'll be good in air conditioning. So maybe I'll have to report back at my end of year video if I did end up wearing it, if it was so sweaty and terrible, and kind of what my thoughts are all around that. I am very excited to have this off the needles and now to be focusing on a couple of other projects. This is something I would absolutely make again, especially in the long sleeve version. I did see that Petite Knit also has an O-neck version, just a crew neck version of this pattern. And so maybe that's something that I would make next. I'm thinking a fall version in like a burgundy or a brown would be really beautiful for those months. So that's something that I'm thinking about, especially since I enjoy knitting it so much and it was such a fast knit. And I think it just looks special and unique and not like something you could buy in a store, which is always really fun with this craft, is to create things that nobody else is wearing and nobody else has. And something that would be like so expensive in a store. Something like this in a store with these fibers would be so expensive. I mean, you can't even find something like this. I would say maybe a brand like Cezanne would have something like this, but it would have at least 20% like polyamide in it or nylon or something. It wouldn't be these 100% natural materials, and the price would be way up there, way more than what I made for this. So that's another really cool aspect to that. All right, so next I have another finished object, and many of you may have seen this already as I posted a complete finished object video for this last Wednesday. And the reason why I did that is just because this was a little bit more of a complex pattern. I had a lot to say about it. I had a lot to say about the yarn in particular and how I was kind of disappointed overall in the quality of the yarn. So if you missed that, check that out. I think it was a really good video that fully went into depths, like my experience knitting brioche for the first time, learning brioche, and also just like working with this yarn. So I don't think I'm gonna make finished object videos for every finished object that I make. I also had a few of you answer a poll where those ones aren't really your favorite videos. You kind of prefer when I just keep everything in a podcast episode. So I'll definitely keep that in mind. But I think if I ever have just a lot to say, a lot to recap, or a really cool like trending yarn that I'm gonna talk about, I think I'll keep that as a full video. So okay, so I just turned off my backlight for this just so I can show you the full color. This is the Feel Good Shawl by Andrea Mallory. And you can see here I did 2-color brioche with this kind of neon-y pink, and this other color is a very like confettied white. The second color is like, it's called Neon Sorbet or Sherbet, I think. And it's just a 1-color brioche, and it has this like rainbowy effect going through it. And then the last section is double brioche. And this is a neon green on this side, and then a peachy, like a speckled peach on the other side. So yeah, this is that. I have often been wearing it at work, just like this. It kind of like wrapped around me. I mentioned in my other video that I do feel like on calls it can tend to look unprofessional and like I'm wearing a blanket. So I haven't been wearing it on calls, which is totally disappointing. But in the office, like where somebody can see the whole garment, I'm still wearing it and think it looks really good. So this is that. And if you click into my other video, you can see me wearing this. I have it like wrapped around my neck, and I have a ton of I have a ton of pictures, the whole process, everything. So yeah, you'll have to check that out to see like why I hated this yarn so much. I'll give you a little sneak peek here. You can kind of see a lot of the pilling on there. I was even thinking, like I just told you about that big meeting I have this week, and I was like, oh, my shawl would be perfect to wear to that. Like I could totally take this out during those sessions, have something warm to cover me up. And then the thought went through my head, oh, but are people gonna think it's messy and that it's not well done? Like, it's so sad that I'm getting in my head that it looks tattered and worn just because it has this pilling on it. I personally know, and I've had friends tell me they don't notice the pilling on me until I point it out, but I think it's just, it's sad because it's one of those things where I just finished this, and when you just finish something, it should be in its most beautiful, like perfect state. I totally understand, like after you wear something a bunch, it's gonna get worn and tattered, but it shouldn't look like that when you finish it. So yeah, if you're interested in that at all, what happened there, definitely check out that video. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any solutions for me in the future when this happens with yarn, I'd love to hear what you do. Okay, so now going into whips, I have, let's see, 3 different whips to share with you guys today. 2 main whips, and then 1 is just a sock update. So actually, let's just start with that. I am still working on the same pair of socks, and that's kind of something that I just want to normalize on my channel as well, is that knitting is a slow craft, and sometimes things are gonna take a while, and if it takes me a whole year to knit 2 pairs of socks, that's normal and that's okay. For me, I only take socks like on my walks, and also like if I'm going to an appointment, I knit these at a nail appointment. I also knit these at a high school graduation. I've knit these by the lake. So it's kind of honestly fun to just have one of these like in your purse and only take it out for those moments. I feel like I'm getting my knitting fix. I'm getting further on my project, but I'm not having to haul around a project where I'm having to remember like where I'm at and what I'm working on. So here's this sock so far. If you've been following my podcast, you know I finished the other one, and this one is almost finished. I'm really excited about these decreases on the heel. I think that they look really, really beautiful. I really like using this pattern by Summer Lee, the I'm So Basic socks. I think it's so easy to follow and just really enjoyable to make. So yeah, we're on to the foot, and hopefully next podcast I will have some finished socks to show you. So not to be so incredibly annoying and like only knit petite knit patterns, oh my gosh, but I think that this t-shirt is different enough than this one that it's worth it to do both, and they're quite different in comparison. Like this one is the V-neck version, and what I'm working on now is the O-neck version, so the crew neck version of a t-shirt. This one I am gonna knit to the elbow, just like Petite Knit's version, and this is made using Knitting for Olive pure silk in the colorway Cream. So let's see if I can get good. There we go. So you can see there, those pretty increases. You're also gonna pick up the neck and do an I-cord bind off on the neckline. And currently right now, I'm just increasing and knitting a whole bunch before I get to split for sleeves. So far, the pattern is very similar to this one. You know, it's the same namesake, but the only difference really being the yarn, and then this one was a V-neck, and this is obviously a crew neck. I am finding that this yarn is really fun to work with. I literally am holding it and I like just wanted to start knitting. Wow, your hand just automatically is like, yeah, let's go, let's start. So yeah, I'm finding this yarn actually enjoyable to work with. I was worried with using a plant fiber because so many people say that plant fibers are really hard on your hands, you get hand cramps and all of that. I have not experienced that yet, but I haven't really, you know, I haven't totally gotten super far. So I'll be mindful of that. But yeah, my only 3mm needle that I had with a 40-inch cord was actually an Addy needle that I had. I had originally bought this thinking maybe I was gonna make a hat or socks with like a magic loop with these, and so I just ended up having this. What's interesting about my Chiagu sets is I only have 2.75 or 3.25, not a 3mm needle. So yeah, but this ended up working great that I already had this, and I'm actually kind of liking these Addy needles because these particular Addy ones that I have a little bit more of a duller point on them. And so I'm finding like with the plant fiber, if it gets a little bit, how should I say, tighter, like where it's not sliding through the needles as fast, sometimes when you're poking and pushing down your needle, you know, have you ever gotten where you get like a point on your finger because you're pushing it down so hard? I'm finding that with this yarn, because it's not so slidey, it's really nice having a little bit duller of a needle tip to push through. And yeah, it's just been really, really enjoyable to knit so far on these needles with this yarn. I also like with my smaller needles, I get more clicking sounds, and it's almost just like ASMR for me. And I hear so many people say that they hate the clicking of metal needles, and that just could not be me. I love the clicking so much. I feel like it's such a nice little sound and it makes me so happy. So you'll have to let me down below. Do you like or hate the clicking sound? Because for me, I absolutely love it. Okay, and now lastly, I have my Maybury cardigan. And you know, one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast is because it really like keeps me accountable and helps me set up my projects in such like an organized way. And I'm finding that I have a less chaotic cast on, don't finish sort of mentality, because it's like, no, I've talked to my audience about this and they know that I'm working on it, and so I'm gonna keep working on it. And yeah, I've found that personally, as someone who loves and doesn't really care about like not finishing things, this has just helped me to like stay more accountable and work on things. So this is the Maybury cardigan. It is absolutely beautiful. This is knit in Fisherman's rib, and the yarn I'm using is Cumulus fiber spates in the color Buttercup, and Sunday, Sanduskarn Sunday in the color Banana, and it is a petite knit colorway. So you can see I'm holding these two together. And I have not touched this since I finished, and I have not touched this since the last podcast where I talked about it. And the reason being is just because once I figured out I wanted to finish that brioche shawl, I thought it was going to be way too much for my head to have a brioche and a fisherman's rib on at the same time. You know, they're both textures where you have to be mindful and be aware of what you're doing the whole time that you're doing it. And so in my head, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna finish that shawl. And then once that's finished, then I can refocus and start working on this cardigan. So I would say the only thing bumming me out a little bit about this cardigan is a little bit like the color. I'm worried that by the time that I finish this, it's gonna be, let's see, what is it now? June 17th? Probably July. It's gonna be really hot. Maybe I'll wear this to the office. Actually, you know what? This will be really beautiful in July and August. If I can finish it by July, I think July and August and September, this would still be really beautiful. And harvest, like yellow is kind of a harvesty color. So maybe I'm talking myself out of that a little bit. Then it may get put away for winter a little bit, but yeah, I guess I was a little bit in my head that, oh no, we're going to be getting into fall and I'm not going to want to wear this, but it's just not true. We're only in June and I need to calm down and be more okay with my choices. So yeah, that's this project. I don't have a ton to talk with you guys about, but what I'm thinking now that I just showed you those is my focus now going forward is going to be that white Cumulus Tee and this yellow cardigan, and those are going to be my next finished objects, you know, along with those socks. But those are definitely my next two focuses, are going to be working on those. And I'm kind of thinking I want to finish one of those two garments before I cast on a third. So I think for me, if you'll notice a trend with my podcasts, I very much am a monogamous knitter. And a big reason for that is once I set something down, I think I'm gonna remember where I'm at in the pattern, and I just don't. So it's actually very hard. Like it's very similar. Like I can't really read two books at once because I like to be all in and fully engrossed in it. And if I set it down, it's really hard to pick it back up and know where you were. For instance, with that yellow cardigan, I'm gonna have to like fully reread the pattern, remind myself what is Fisherman's rib, how do I work Fisherman's rib, where the heck am I even at in this pattern, you know? So like having the people that have on like 5 garments at once, I have no idea how they're doing that and how they're like just interchanging them. My brain maybe isn't as isn't maybe as talented at multitasking. I'm not really sure. But so yeah, those are going to be my two focuses for my whips. And then after that, I will be casting on a sweater for my husband finally. So I am thinking my next 2 cast-ons are going to be this sweater that I'm about to talk to you about. And then I also have a video next week where I'm comparing a lot of very similar patterns. And I'm gonna pick one from that video that I'm also gonna cast on after these. So stay tuned for that next Wednesday. I'm gonna be like comparing over a handful of patterns that are so similar and that I think you'll really enjoy watching, just so we can figure out like, okay, I'm looking at all these patterns, they all look the same, which one should I make? But what I just swatched for is the zipper sweater Man light version by Petite Knit, and I have this here. I actually just cast this off last night before the new like House of the Dragon episode came out, and so I was just having like such a good knitting night because I finished this, I blocked it, then I finished this swatch and I also got to block it. And then like my favorite TV show, the season came back after 2 years of waiting. So it was just like such a fun day yesterday. And then I cast this off and I was just like, oh my gosh, freaking out to my husband because of the drape of this, the stretchiness of it, the fabric, everything is just exactly what I wanted. And I'm just so happy because this yarn I actually got from my knitting guild. So the Madison Knitting Guild, from where I live in Madison, Wisconsin, they hold like a little knit in during a weekend in the summer because we don't meet during the summer months. And they had just a really beautiful vendor showcase of some local vendors. And I was able to pick up this Wild Barn yarn. And this is from Harvest Hill Acres. So Most commonly online, I think they're referred to as Harvest Hill Acres. And why I fell in love with this yarn was, first of all, I was looking for a DK weight yarn. And I was also looking for a yarn that just would appeal to my husband, but also that I would want to steal. And I ran across their booth, and what I loved about their booth in particular is just that every single one of their yarns had a little basket, and it had the name of the sheep and the year that they were sheared. So this yarn in particular is from Brooklyn. That's the name of the sheep, and they are based out of Denison, Minnesota. And so I could actually like go to their farm and meet Brooklyn, which was just so freaking cute. And I just had the best experience talking with her and figuring out, okay, this is the pattern that I'm making. Which yarn do you think would fit best? She had like a variety of DK weights, and she felt like this one was a very true DK. I also just really loved this color. I knew this would be a color that my husband would wear and also that I would love. So yeah, I'm just really excited about working with a fiber that is natural, hasn't been dyed, and also the fact that it just comes from one sheep. I absolutely love that idea. And there's something about working with a yarn that is a 100% wool. There's just nothing like it. Like, there is a reason why knitting is associated with wool, and it's because it's just the perfect fiber. And as I'm knitting this, I'm sending my friends a voice note like, why the heck do we just like mess up this process? We are like, we're trying to make every single different plant fiber work. We're trying to dye a million different colors. We're trying to, we're stripping yarns into superwash, and like, also, obviously I use all of those things, so keep that in mind, but it's perfect as it is. It is perfect and flawless as it is. Their natural colors look beautiful on our skin tones, and so it's almost like working with this has just reminded me like, oh my God, we totally overthink this process and kind of make fibers into things and we kind of just make fibers into things they don't need to be sometimes. And I don't know if that makes sense, but like, fibers in their perfect form are kind of, in so many ways, like what God intended them to be is perfect as it is. And so yeah, I've really just been like reminded of that with this yarn, and it's perfect. It's springy, it's spongy. When you're knitting with it, it just like grooves back and forth. There's nothing like knitting with a spongy, perfect wool. There's nothing like it. And if you've never knit with a wool like this, I highly recommend like going to a vendor showcase or something. This summer, there's a lot of festivals and things going on. Find a yarn that's just like 100% wool from sheep in your area and fall in love. This is also really soft, very soft. It's not as rustic as I thought it was going to be. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to see this in a zipper sweater. I'm also very excited to steal this sweater from my husband. My husband wears a size large, so I think it's going to be like the perfect oversized thing to steal for me. I also wear a size large, but like I wear a size medium to large in women's, so I think it's going to be the perfect oversized thing to steal. And then lastly, I just have a really cute little bag to show you guys. This is a project bag I got from that same vendor showcase, and I absolutely love it because it's these sheep wearing sweaters. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. And this is from the brand Emma Ball. So I think this is going to be reversed for you guys. But apparently she is an illustrator from the UK. So I don't know how easy it is to order and get things from her. The Harvest Hill Acres, they had a whole bunch of her line in their booth, and they apparently just like order it in bulk and get it shipped in. But there's a couple of really cute lines that Emma Ball has that I love. There's this one, there's another sheep one that's just like sheep without sweaters, and then there's a cat one, like where the cats are knitting and have sweaters too. And I actually got some stitch markers for that. I'll have to show you guys that at another time. But yeah, I just love this bag. The inside is a fabric that looks like little knit stitches, and then it has these drawstrings, and it's just like a pretty good hefty size, and it just makes me like so happy every time I look at it. So right now I have just a couple projects in there, and I'm excited to continue to use it. Okay, well that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that you enjoyed today's video and that you make time for yourself this week and make time to craft and maybe knit in public, my all-time favorite thing. If you did enjoy today's video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you have not already. I'll see you guys next Wednesday for another video. Have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.